Hello and welcome. I need to look here, I guess, right? Yeah. Welcome to our 100 days CEL Science Speakers, 100 Days of Data for Learning series. Today, we have Kazem Banihashem. I hope I say that correct. We'll talk about his work at the OU and Wageningen University about the role of theory and pedagogy for learning analytics, right? So welcome, Kazem. The floor is yours.
Hello, Marcus. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me to this webinar. I'm really happy to be here. And yeah, can I start presenting my work if you are okay with it?
Fine, yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me share my screen then. So can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Okay, let me see. Just a moment, please.
You're back. Can you again
yeah.
try to share the screen?
Yeah.
Sorry, there was some hiccup here.
Yeah,
Yes, here we go.
okay.
Very good.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. Today I will talk about theory, pedagogy, and the role.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's the internet over here or.
Do I have a cable here?
Any problem?
Yeah. Just continue. We try to solve it here.
Okay. So my talk will be more, let's say, theoretical. So don't expect too much practical information today. But I will start a little bit about a background about theory and learning and also pedagogy. And then I will, after giving this overall picture, I will talk about the role of theory in learning analytics. And then I will say what kind of approaches we can have regarding learning analytics based on different learning theories. And then I will wrap up my presentation with making some conclusions. So let's start with the very opening questions, which is about what is learning. I guess that if you go to university or go to school and ask different teachers, what do they mean exactly by learning? Probably you will hear different answers about what do they mean by learning. And this is due to the complex nature of the learning and also, as you know, from different disciplines like computer science, psychology, educational science, and behavioral science, scholars from different disciplines, they have their own definition of learning. And even within a specific and certain discipline, still we don't have a unified definition of learning, such as in educational science, we still don't have a very unified and let's say universal definition of learning. And probably some people say that learning is more about process, which leads to understanding of a concept, or some says maybe the learning is about the acquisition of knowledge, or more deeper about skills. And maybe some says that learning is more about connecting and making interactions between students and creating a network that helps with flowing of the information and knowledge sharing. And or maybe some says that the permanent change in behavior is the actual learning. So you could see that the learning has different definitions based on the perspective you have. And if we go even a bit deeper, and if we ask, how does learning take place, or who plays the main role, or how can learning be measured, I guess that again you will hear different responses from different educators or even different educational scientists. Here I will give you two examples of the two different and main perspectives. The one is the behaviors perspectives. So if you are a behaviorist, let's say, that in that case, learning means more about transmission of knowledge, which is basically provided by teachers for students. And in such case, we could say that the teachers play the main role. And when it comes to measuring the learning, we look more to the behaviors and the outcomes of these students, what they have achieved. And in such perspective, learning is more linear and systematic, which means that teachers follows a one-by-one step to achieve the goal in the end. And in such case, learning is, or the education process is more prescriptive, as teachers take the main role and in giving the information and playing active role, and not playing a facilitative role. And also, in such case, we normally focus on the teaching methods rather than active learning techniques or methods. And again, when it comes to the learning, what we expect to see is more about the outcomes, not the process. And in such case, again, when we want to assess, we look for the summative assessments to actually assess the outcomes, not the formative assessment. But on the other hand, if you are a constructivist, well, you may have a different perspective into your learning and education. For example, in constructivism perspective, the learning means the personal construction of knowledge. And that means that it's the learner actually takes the main responsibility of his own learning. And for such perspective, or for such, let's say, educational perspective, normally we look how learning is happening, or what is the learning process. We are more interested to see actually what process has been followed by the learning to get there. And the role of the teachers also, based on this perspective, could be more facilitative than prescriptive. And again, in such perspective, we expect more to see that students take the role, and also the active learning methods matters more than the teaching method, because it's the students that take the role for the learning process. And of course, that in such case, we more focus on the formative assessment than summative assessment. So these are the two, let's say, perspective, or the overall, let's say, perspective we can have towards education. They were just examples. So when it comes to learning analytics, so in the beginning, there was so much focus on the LA that it was so like hot topic, and everyone says that it's the LA can decide everything in education. And what happens back then was the technological determinism, which means that we simply fell into the trap that it's the LA decides how education should look like, or what steps should be taken in education. And that was a kind of mistake, because the whole purpose of learning analytics is to actually provide insights for teachers or learners, and to facilitate their learning, not to take the role of, instead of the teachers or learners, to decide what to do. And that was a kind of mistake, and it has been criticized back then by many of the LA scholars. For example, One of the famous articles in that case was written by Gashevich and his colleagues, which is, they said, okay, let's not forget that the learning analytics is about learning. So what I did is that I tried to take further steps. We took the further steps to see what exactly mean when we say that learning analytics is about learning, or what exactly means that theory plays a role in learning analytics. And so we did an interview with famous scholars in this field to identify what kind of roles they can recognize for learning, for theory in the use of learning analytics. And what I have found is that basically 3 main roles can be identified for learning theories in learning analytics. So the first role is the underpinning role, which means that theories and the perspective we have regarding the education can simply tell us what kind of a LA tool is appropriate to be used in my class, let's say. For example, if you are if you have a behaviorist perspective or if you, let's say, focus more on the outcomes than the process, then that says something to you, that the dashboard I want to use or the LA tool I want to use, for example, should be teacher-centered. If the behaviorist perspective is your, let's say, main educational perspective. So one role for the learning theory is that it can help you to select an appropriate LA tool for your class. The second role is the guiding role. And basically, what does it mean is that learning theories tells us that what learning means and how students learn, what kind of a process, information process is going on in students, and what teaching or learning factors matter to us. So these information can actually help LA to know what kind of data we need to collect in such class in order to have, let's say, effective or successful educational interventions. So in the next step, learning theories, assumptions, and the elements that we define for such theory can help us to know what kind of data we need to collect. And in the last step, actually learning theories or educational foundations can help us to interpret our reports. So in the end, we expect the LA to give us some reports, results, or dashboards. And when we want to interpret these results, it's wise to look back to to educational foundations. What does these results mean for us? And that is how we can make, let's say, effective educational interventions. For example, if you have let's say, a behaviorist perspective, and if you see that the learning goals you defined have not been obtained by the students, then based on such perspective, you should look back to the teaching methods or what has been done wrongly by the teachers. So in such step, learning theories can help us to better understand the results and make sense of those results to make a better educational interventions. And so we first had the overall look of the learning theory's role in learning analytics. We also took steps further to see, okay, what kind of LA approaches can actually be defined based on those let's say, learning theories perspectives. So what we have done is that we provided, let's say, conceptual framework, and in our framework, we define 3 different learning analytics approaches, which each is rooted in different epistemological learning theory and pedagogical design for example, we identified behaviors learning analytics, which is rooted in the behaviorism learning theories. And again, if we go back even back further, we could see that such kind of theory is rooted in the positivist or objectivist epistemological beliefs. And also we had constructivist learning analytics, which is basically can be implemented in the pedagogical design, which is based on the learners' behaviors, or what is going to be done by the learner. And also connectivist learning analytics, which is more about which can be, let's say, effectively be implemented in the learning ecosystem design, which is rooted in the connectivism learning theory, which of course I will further elaborate each of those perspectives. So let's start with the behaviors learning analysis, and what do we mean by this? So in the beginning, I also explained this perspective, that what do we mean by behaviors educational perspective? So first of all, I guess that most of the LA dashboards that we have is based on the behaviors learning analytics, as the dashboards are reported for teachers, and it is more quantitative based than the qualitative data. And in such perspective, in such LA, we expect to see that the data is collected based on what is achieved, not how is achieved. And in such, of course, learning analytics perspective, the main focus is on measuring the products, not the process. So behavioral data such as the grades, which final grades, or the total number of logins or loggings out, those kind of observable and quantitative data, which is an indication of a behavior, it matters more than, let's say, the data is much more meaningful about the process which is happening in mind. And in such perspective, the behaviors learning analytics, I mean, the nature of data we expect to see to be more quantitative than the qualitative. And typically, this kind of learning analytics is more suitable for low order thinking skills, not for the higher order thinking skills or complex learning process. So we expect to use, to be more effective in a low level of the education or thinking skills. And also the dashboards normally provided by this perspective, we expect it to be provided for the teachers, not for the learners, because as we said before, that in this behaviors perspective, it's the teachers that play the main role, not the learners. So the dashboards provided for teachers. And since the data is more observable, quantitative, of course, the capturing such data is also easier. And maybe an example of this kind of dashboard, which we also shared in our paper, could be this one, that you can simply see that this dashboard is provided for the teachers. And here you can see for example, the number of the students, the name of the students, that whether they submit the task or not, whether they failed or passed the exam or results, or about the grades. So more the dashboard is about the teacher, and the more about the outcomes or the products that have been produced by the learners. So we also have constructivist learning analytics, and we propose such, let's say, approach. And in such approach, we expect that the LA dashboard provides insights into the learning process more, and how learning is happening, or how is achieved, not about what is achieved. So because as we explained about the constructivist perspectives, what matters is the process that leads students to construct their own knowledge, and that's how we expect to see that that's what that means for us as a learning. And in such case, the main focus is on measuring the process and also how learning is progressing. And for such approach, we expect to have more data about the process. For example, the engagement data which explains how bad or good students were engaged in the learning process. And for the nature of data, we expect that both quantitative and qualitative data actually can matter here. And maybe the main methods for such perspective could be semantic analysis or natural language processing, which is more about analyzing more qualitative data or texts. And the dashboards or the feedback that is provided by such approach is more for learners, not for teachers. It's mainly for learners, let's say. And the purpose is to help learners to be independent learning, because as we explained before, that in constructivist perspective, it's the students or learner take the responsibility of learning. So what we expect from such perspective or such LA dashboard is to help students to become a self-regulated learner, to be independent in their learning, and to know how to make interventions to improve their own learning. However, in such, of course, since this kind of approach could be a bit complex, then of course collecting data and analyzing such data could be also challenging in both online learning environments and also face-to-face environments. And maybe one example for constructivist learning analytics approach could be the ACO-Writer, which you simply can go through the data that, for example, the feedback data students generated for each others, and you can see, for example, how good or bad is this feedback, whether it is constructive, whether it's more reflective, or what kind of features this text has, which leads students to improve their learning, and this kind of information which can actually tells us about the process and the data that has been produced during this learning process, whether it was good or not good enough to improve their own learning. And the last one could be called connectivist learning analytics. And in such perspective, well, first of all, we should say that the connectivism, what do we mean by connectivism? Well, connectivism is first introduced by George Siemens, I guess in 2005. And basically this learning theory says that in the digital age, the old learning theories, including behaviorism, constructivism, or cognitivism, they cannot really meet students or learners' need. For example, those learning theories cannot explain the interpersonal learning that could happen, or for example, the learning the thing that we can learn from technology, from objects, from non-human objects. So those old learner theories cannot really describe or explain how could it even happen. So, and that means that, so in the digital age, we have so much knowledge, and this knowledge is distributed between human, even non-human, within technology. And the learning is actually not about understanding a concept or acquisition of knowledge, but more about creating a network, because there are so much rapid growing of knowledge in the current time, and we cannot really simply rely on the learning one specific topic And instead, we should more focus on creating a network that gives us the opportunity to be a part of information flow or knowledge sharing. And that's how they actually define learning in the digital age. And in such case, the learning analytics dashboards for such perspective should focus on measuring the interactions, for example, between students or learners, and how the quality of the flow that is going on between two students is good or bad, and measuring such kind of things. And so in such case, the focus is about how well a learner is interacting, not about what is learned or how is learned. And it's not only about connecting between a learner to another learner, but also it could be connecting the connections, the quality of the connections between a learner with the technology, with the hashtag, or something else that is not actually a human. And maybe one of the LA methods could be suitable for such approach is a social network analysis, or SNA. And here you can see an example, which this picture was taken from a course from a Canvas platform from University of British Columbia. And in that dashboard, you can see that who is connecting to who or what, and how the quality of this connection could be, and how the bigger the node is or the smaller the node is, they mean something, and this information is suitable for the learning perspective that is based on the connectivism. So based on the learning theories, I could say that main learning theories, maybe we could have three main different LA approaches. So what can really we learn from this information or this presentation, let's say? So I think we can say that the effective adoption of LA really needs to take the educational and pedagogical foundations into consideration. We cannot really expect to have effective or successful use of LA if we don't know what is the pedagogy behind the use of this tool. And before we use LA, I guess we need to have a clear understanding of the learning approach and the learning perspective we have. And that's how we can properly maybe select our LA tool, and also we can know what kind of a data we need to collect, and also having this strong and clear understanding of learning perspective can help us also to better interpret our results. But also it has some risks, this kind of perspective. And what is the risk, or what is the limitation, is that honestly, maybe recognizing these kind of approaches in theory, or in theory is easy and it's more understandable. But when it comes to the practice, they are actually intertwined, and we cannot really make a good distinguish between behavior's perspective with the constructivist perspective. But we can say, why does it matter? And then to know those kind of perspectives, I guess that what matters here is that clear understanding of the educational theories, and what are the logic of using these theoretical theories behind learning analytics can help us to better understand why even we use learning analytics, why do we use it, and how can we use it, and again, how can we really make a meaningful understanding of the LA outputs. And on the other hand, I guess, more to say is that I guess that more empirical research is needed in that case to see how actually in practice we can implement different LA approaches, or we can really mix them together to achieve the obtained or intended learning goals. Yeah, thank you so much for your listening, and I hope that it was helpful.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Should I stop the sharing screen to go back to the?
Yeah, probably that's nice. Then I kick off also a question while you stop that. First of all, I think very nice starting point to come from the idea of how different learning theories look at learning, and then to select the indicators and the data points you want to use for steering or helping with the process, right? So I wonder in how far that is also already then, I mean, linked to the type of instructional design you have, let's say, or the tasks. Yeah, let's say a teacher that has designs his course based on behavioristic principles will include different tasks and assignments in the course because he defines growth of the student in a different way. So in how far would your conclusion be that, let's say, based on a certain approach or learning paradigm you choose, that you also have to redesign the whole course and not only the data points that you use and give feedback about?
So if I understood you correctly, you mean that how possibly we can use this approach in a real class if, for example, a teacher has a behaviorist perspective? Is that the question, if I understood you correctly?
Yeah, the question is also, of course, your conclusion is great, I think, to say, okay, let's choose the data points that define and show the process or show the outcome according to what is our conviction of what learning is, right? The question is, this of course concerns the learning analytics design, but it also concerns the instructional design of your whole course, right? So what is the link to the instructional design, for example, to the assignments?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. So actually we did an experimental study, and I didn't bring it here because it was, let's say, I mean, we can further discuss this. And what we did in that paper is that we created a model which mixed learning analytics with learning design model, and we actually mixed them in one model, which we call it a constructivist learning design learning analytics model, CLDLA model. And we actually wanted to see how feasible is this if we want to have a, let's say, constructivist learning analytics. How can we mix it with the learning design in the class in order to define or design our tasks or activities? And what can I say is that, so we have very strong learning design models that that very clearly says us that what kind of a process you need to follow in order to have such, let's say, successful practice. And so when you have your teaching and learning process based on those models, which we can discuss what kind of models, for example, like the 4CID model from Euron, or then based on that, you can see for the assumptions I mentioned here, you can see that which type of data you need or which kind of LA methods you need, and then you can mix them or you can apply it in that context. I think that's feasible, and it's something that we can do it.
Yeah. So in that sense, also, if I get you right, your model would propose that also learning analytics design could become a component of instructional design in general.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I can share also these papers here right just now, if you want to further.
We can probably edit with the recording to the share page. Other questions? No.
Yeah, for me, I was wondering how context independent are those learning analytics models? I understand that maybe, am I right to assume that the ones that are more on the quantitative behavioralist side are less context dependent, less dependent on what the topic of a course is, and the more we go towards connectivism, they are more dependent, so they have to be developed individually per course.
So what was your question exactly? I'm sorry.
How is there a relationship between how generalizable learning analytics models are, at least their implementations, and their type? Because it seems to me like the ones that are more in the behavioralist side are more easily generalizable as tools to be used in several courses, for example, in institution.
Yeah,
But the other ones are more context dependent.
exactly. That is true. I think the more complex design you have, the difficulties for LA to collect data, to give you more insightful information, because what really happening about learning is inside within the mind and inside here, or this cognitive process that's going on. It's hard to catch. But for behavior's perspective, since more is about observable data and observable behavior, so using learning analytics or applying that could be easier than, let's say, constructivist perspective, which also requires more complex type of learning. And that is true, yes, I guess.
Okay. All right. Any more? Then I would like to thank you again for your presentation. We have a recording. We will share this with you and also add you to the general outcome report and a short overview of your presentation. So thanks a lot for your talk, and yeah, probably for some collaboration in the future.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for the time, for giving me the opportunity to be here.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.